Invincible Season 3 has unfortunately came to an end, but I think that means that now is the perfect time to make a tier list ranking every Invincible character by how strong they are from what we've seen from each of them in the show. Keep in mind, I'm not talking about the comic versions of these characters, and obviously these rankings are going to change as the story goes on. This list is purely based on what we've seen from the characters as of the end of Season 3, so please try to refrain from comic book spoilers down in the comments. But alright, with that out of the way, let's start at the bottom with the unknown tier for characters that we just honestly have not seen enough of to rank. Someone being in this tier doesn't necessarily mean that they're weak, all it means is that we haven't seen enough feats from them in the show to properly rank them. Now, the only two characters that we're gonna have in the unknown tier are Black Samson and Bulletproof. So we'll start with Black Samson. Black Samson's a weird one because he lost his powers a long time ago and then came back to the Guardians with a power suit, which we never even saw him use. Then he got his ass beat by Battle Beast so bad that he got his powers back, but we still haven't even seen him use them. One thing I can say though is Black Samson is a true hero. He's the most motivational of the Guardians, and he showed some real bravery when he charged Battle Beast with no suit to try and save Invincible. But as far as how strong he actually is, no clue. The other character in unknown tier is Bulletproof. We haven't seen anything from him since he joined the Guardians. We know he has similar powers to Mark, like he can fly, he's probably durable considering his name, but we have no idea what the extent of his speed or strength is, and so I don't feel like I can properly rank him. Okay, after the unknown tier, we have D tier. This tier is for characters who are borderline worthless in a fight themselves, but have access to either power, money, or others to help get them out of whatever situation they're in. So this is my first time doing a tier list, so forgive me if I'm doing this wrong, but I'm gonna go from the bottom to the top, okay? So at the bottom of D tier, we're gonna have D.A. Sinclair. D.A. Sinclair would probably get his ass kicked by just about anyone on this list, considering he's just a psychopathic rich kid with no fighting skills, but he did create and has access to the Reanimen, who have been seen to even give Viltrumites trouble. He's definitely smart, but I don't think smart enough to actually help him in a fight. But since Sinclair is one of many characters who rely more on others to fight for him rather than fight himself, I want to establish this rule now. This list is based off of how powerful each individual character is, not how many allies they could summon. So Sinclair doesn't get his Reanimen, and someone like Angstrom can't summon evil Invincibles to fight for him either. But okay, I just had to get that cleared up. So let's continue. Next up in D tier is going to be Green Ghost. We never really saw anything from Green Ghost besides her getting her head caved in by Omni-Man. It seems like her only powers are flight and intangibility, which is very helpful for saving people, which is why she was probably on the Guardians to begin with, but she seems pretty worthless in a fight. Next up in D tier is going to be Machine Head. Machine Head is another difficult one to rank, considering on his own, I don't think he really even has any powers. I'm sure his technology makes him incredibly smart and gives him some kind of connection to technology, but that doesn't help if you have a Viltrumite flying at you. He did become quite dangerous when he got the probability implant though, which allowed him to calculate probabilities and essentially see the future. But besides that, it seems like he just relies on others to do his dirty work. Next up, we have the GOAT, Donald. While we all know Donald is awesome and has a great character arc, I'm just not sure how well he does in actual combat. We haven't really seen him fight, but being a cyborg, he's clearly very difficult to get rid of permanently, but we haven't seen him have any other feats that would warrant his placement any higher. Next in D tier is going to be Darkwing 1. Considering Darkwing was a founding member of the Guardians, we have to assume he was quite useful for the team. The issue is, we never actually see any of this. We know he doesn't have any powers and relies on technology, but in this universe, that just isn't going to cut it. He's supposed to be a Batman stand-in, but we never see any of the things that make Batman an important part of the Justice League, like his resources, his investigative abilities, and his planning and contingencies. If that was Batman instead of Darkwing, the Guardians would have had a plan in case of Omni-Man's turn. Okay, now rounding off D tier is gonna be Cecil. Cecil's a pretty difficult character to rank. On one hand, he's just an old man, albeit a well-trained and very smart old man, but just an old man. On the other hand, he is quite possibly the most powerful non-superpowered person on the planet, with access to teleportation technology, unlimited resources, and technology from the GDA, heroes on payroll ready to fight anyone he says, and even contingencies for Viltrumites. As I said before for Sinclair though, I'm not going to allow Cecil to summon others to fight for him, but I am giving him access to his teleporter and other GDA technology. With that being said, he would still be powerless against the majority of the people on this list. So I think top of D tier is fair. If you disagree with this placement, let me know down in the comments. Alright, next up we have C tier. The characters in this tier have very situational powers with obvious exploits, but are still strong enough to be really useful in group fights and stuff like that. At the bottom of C tier, we're gonna have Titan. Maybe you could argue that Titan belongs higher on this list, but I don't know, I just don't see it. We haven't really seen enough of him actually fighting to put him up any higher. He had an excellent fight in that one episode, but it was against all normal humans, and I think the majority of people on this list could have won that fight even easier. It seems like if you can get past his shell, he just has the same durability as a normal human. After Titan though, we're gonna have Shrinking Ray. Ray probably deserves to be higher on this list, but just like Ant-Man, she can shrink down and use that to her advantage in a fight. The only problem is that she doesn't really have the firepower to finish anyone in this universe off. She sold out and tried to burst one of the lizards from the inside and was actually swallowed and crushed. She did manage to survive that though, but we just haven't seen enough feats out of her to put her any higher on this list. Next in C tier, we have Aquarius. While definitely a great design for an Aquaman stand-in, I'm not sure what kind of effect in a fight he would really even have. Now, a lot of the Guardian members are pretty niche, but that's what made them a good team. They had an answer for every situation. He's probably super difficult to fight in the water, but on land, the only thing he was shown doing was blasting water from his hands, which unfortunately isn't going to do much against people in this verse. Coming in next, we have Shapesmith. Shapesmith doesn't have many good feats since joining the Guardians. He is particularly resistant against the Sequids, which has been helpful, but besides that, he just doesn't have the strength to really make an impact in most fights. Before this, unlike Martian Man, he has had no combat experience, and so if he can ever figure out his abilities better, maybe he'll be able to move up the tier list. Next up is Isotope. We haven't really seen Isotope do too much on his own, but his teleportation powers could definitely be extremely useful in niche situations, such as when he teleported Mr. Liu's bodyguard into the sky and dropped him. If you can't fly, that is not going to end well for you. I'm actually surprised we don't see that in media with teleportation characters more often. He could also work in a Red Rush type of role where he can pull people out of danger. Also, as far as we know, there doesn't really seem to be any limitations on his powers, so I think up here in C tier is a pretty good spot for him. Next is Duplicate. Honestly, I wish I could put Kate lower, but her potential is keeping her above the people below her. We've seen what her and her brother can do with their powers, and maybe I'm misremembering this, but I think Kate has more disdain for their powers, looking at it as more of a curse, where Multipole sees them more as an opportunity. Either way, Kate basically contributes nothing to fights besides being cannon fodder and a distraction. Above Kate is going to be Martian Man. We didn't get to see a lot out of Martian Man, but just the fact that he was able to restrain Omni-Man for as long as he did was pretty damn impressive. If he had just kept his little organ ball on the backside, he may have survived. He just seems like a stronger, more serious, and more experienced Shapesmith. Okay, so the next one that I have on the list was supposed to be Doc Seismic, but I think I wrote his thing before I decided that Cecil and Sinclair couldn't summon people, so I had him using his underground people up at the top of C tier. But honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, he's probably gonna go like here. Just because without the creatures that he controls, he still has the gravity manipulation gloves, and he's clearly able to manipulate the earth in some type of way, but the description that I wrote for him doesn't really work anymore, so middle of D tier, that's okay. Now, at the top of C tier, we're going to have Powerplex. Now, Powerplex, I would understand if you think he deserves to be higher, because he also defeated an alternate Mark without dying. But I feel like that's due to the alternate Mark not understanding his powers. Powerplex may very well deserve to be higher, because we haven't really seen how strong he can get on screen. That being said, I think that anyone strong enough could just one-shot him, and anyone weaker could just stop hitting him and they win. Alright, with the bottom half of our rankings done, we can move into B tier. B tier is a tier reserved for characters who would not be able to survive an encounter with a Viltrumite, but have powers or tools available to them versatile enough that they can have significant impacts on the fights that they're involved in. And at the bottom of B tier is going to be Red Rush. Obviously, we didn't get to see much of Red Rush, but what we did see was really impressive. He was able to outspeed Omni-Man, and many people argue that if he had stayed on defense for that fight, they would have had a much better chance of winning. Where he falls flat is in his damage output. I'm just not sure he's strong enough to actually hurt any of the people above him on this list. Next up in B tier is a character that I had a little bit of trouble ranking. You might not agree with this, you might think he's higher, you might think he's lower, but next is going to be Rex. Regardless of where you want to rank him, Rex had one of the best character arcs in the entire show. It's heartbreaking that we didn't get to see him and Ray live happily ever after, but as far as strength, I feel like he overperforms in basically every single fight that he's in. When him, Kate, and Ray fought the Lizard League, he managed to defeat 2 of them with literally no help from the girls. He also survived a bullet to the brain, but unfortunately, it seems like he can't do much real damage without sacrificing himself as well. In order to defeat the big lizard dude, he had to lose his hand, and he did manage to defeat one of the alternate marks, but he had to sacrifice himself in order to do it. That feat alone cements his place here in B tier, and I would understand if you wanted to argue he belongs even higher. RIP Rex. After Rex, we're gonna have the Mauler twins. These two have shown to give the heroes some trouble occasionally. Before Oliver gave them jaw and brain surgery, they had easily taken out the new Guardians with their nerve gun or whatever it was. They're also geniuses and showed off their ingenuity and teamwork during their fight with Robot. Also, if you don't take both clones off the table, the remaining one will just bring the other one back for another fight. After the lovable clones, we have Darkwing 2. Darkwing 2 arguably deserves to be higher on this list due to the fact that he is an instant win button against basically anyone. Unfortunately, like Rex, it seems that he had to sacrifice himself in order to trap the alternate mark in the Shadowverse, but I feel like he shouldn't have had to. He also has access to all the old Darkwing's technology, which includes the upgraded exosuit, which allows him to kind of fight on terms with superpowered people. Not Invincible, but others. Next up in B tier is Multi-Paul. Multi-Paul is interesting because his powers can be extremely useful if used correctly. Unlike Kate, Paul has no reserves or care for his clones, and thus can use them in much more creative ways. We see this when he breaks out of his prison cell by just pure volume of flesh in the room. Obviously, his clones are also just kind of cannon fodder, but he can be very dangerous in a group fight and can overwhelm a lot of non-Viltrumites with just sheer numbers. Next up in B tier is going to be Monster Girl. As powerful as she seems, I feel like we just haven't seen enough big feats out of her to warrant her being any higher on this list. She serves well as the Guardian's tank and brawler, but I would need to see more from her before moving her up this list. Finally, at the top of B tier, we have Robot. I think we can all agree that Robot is a fascinating character, but usually falls a little flat when it comes to actual combat. He's proven that if a problem needs to be solved, he is the guy though. He's saved the Guardians' butts multiple times throughout the story, like with the Flaxen invasion or the Sequids. When in actual combat though, we usually see his drones just kind of getting wrecked. Very useful guy to have around, but not nearly as valuable in straight one-on-one combat. Alright. Now we're starting to get to the good stuff, the stuff that you guys came here to see. This is A tier. So A tier is for characters who could possibly survive a fight with a Viltrumite, but wouldn't necessarily be able to defeat a Viltrumite one-on-one just yet. And so the first character that I'm going to put in A tier is going to be Oliver. Oliver is a tough one to scale because I'm unsure how much of his strength is due to him being a Viltrumite and just genuinely being that strong, or if other heroes like Immortal are holding back in most situations to avoid casualties. So obviously Oliver was able to one-tap the Maulers, but could Immortal do that? Maybe? I'm honestly not sure. Either way, he deserves to be in A tier purely off of being a Viltrumite and surviving an encounter with Conquest. Him lacking experience and literally, let me remind you, being 9 months old at the end of season 3 keeps him at the bottom of A tier though. Above Oliver in A tier, we have War Woman. Okay, now I understand if you want to argue with me on this one, but I think it was clear that War Woman and Immortal were the heavy hitters of the original Guardians team. If she were still alive, she would definitely be on the level of the Immortal against anyone besides Viltrumites. She can fly, and I think that she did the most damage to Omni-Man during that fight, even more than Immortal. Next up in A tier is a character that everyone loves to shit on. We got Immortal coming in. I'm definitely not saying that I agree with the decisions of his character, but we have to admit, outside of Viltrumites, he is definitely one of the most powerful heroes on Earth. Like, name one character on Earth that isn't a Viltrumite that could actually beat Immortal in a one-on-one fistfight. There are very few, if any, that could. He deserves to be in A tier. Next is kind of a weird one. It's going to be Damien Darkblood. I'm not sure that Darkblood can actually die. Since he's a demon, I think the only way to get rid of him is to banish him to hell, but even then, he can eventually make his way back. I'm also pretty sure there was a scene in season 1 where Cecil said he would love to see Omni-Man and Darkblood fight because it would be like a rock and a hard place, so I think he deserves to be in A tier. If you disagree with Darkblood's position, then let me know where you would put him because I'm not really sure. But next up is going to be Angstrom Levy. While Angstrom is kind of a pushover when it comes to actually fighting hand to hand, he is very good with his powers. He has full access to the entire multiverse, so really his potential is limitless. He's really only nerfed by the fact that he is actually insane at this point in the story. Obviously, like I stated before, he can't just summon people, but he has built-in multiverse powers. So he could easily just trap someone in another reality and just leave them there. Or he could do a multitude of other things as well. Angstrom is definitely dangerous. Now this is another character you might not agree, but this is where I decided to rank her. We got Adam Eve coming up next. Eve solidified her spot in A tier after the season 3 finale, when she was able to actually put up a fight against Conquest, which is a lot more than most characters would be able to say. When she isn't just creating barriers with her powers, she can actually be a big problem. Also, she was able to come back from the dead and was the reason that Mark was even able to defeat Conquest to begin with. If she could ever fully get past those mental blocks, she would be a huge problem. Now, this character might be the biggest surprise on this tier list to most people, but I don't care. Next up is Mr. Liu. You might be surprised to see him this high on the list, but honestly, this dude is a tank. Especially if you don't know that his body can be hurt while he's in the dragon form. He's basically invincible. He was kicking Mark's ass in that fight, and then when he was defeated, he just came right back, fully healed, ready to continue the fight. Easy A tier, in my opinion. Alright, and finally, we got our main character, Invincible. While Mark is definitely the strongest hero on Earth, it's a big universe, and I'm not sure that he belongs in our top tier just yet. I think that Conquest could have easily killed Mark whenever he chose to. Conquest lost because he was toying with Mark, and Mark got a bit of help from Oliver and Eve. That being said, he still not only survived, but defeated a fully grown Viltrumite, and one of the strongest and most feared Viltrumites at that. Besides Conquest though, we have seen Mark prove time and time again that he is not to be messed with. He is almost always holding back in his fights. He would be able to end most fights with non-Viltrumites in seconds if he chose to. The only characters that beat him in raw strength and fortitude are the characters in our top tier. Surprise, we got one more in A tier, and that's going to be Alan the Alien above Invincible. While evidently still not on the level of a fully grown Viltrumite, Alan has shown that he can more than hold his own. We've seen him take multiple hits from Viltrumites and survive, which is more than most characters can say. But I think that if not for Nolan's intervention, he would have died fighting the Executioner Viltrumite, so I don't think that he deserves a spot in our top tier yet either though. We've seen how much stronger he gets through his Zenkai boost when he almost dies, and so I think that he'll be in the top tier pretty soon. I also just want to say that I believe Mark and Alan are basically equals at this point in strength and durability, but I'm giving Alan the edge here just because of the experience. If you disagree with me, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are, drop it down in the comments and let me know what you think about these two. Now finally, we have reached our top tier, the Viltrumite tier. This tier is reserved for only the strongest characters who either are a Viltrumite or can defeat a fully grown Viltrumite. We have seen throughout the show that Viltrumites are just on an entirely different level than most of the other characters in the universe. So I think that them getting their own tier is more than justified. Alright, the weakest character that we have in the Viltrumite tier is definitely going to be Vidor. Vidor is definitely the weakest named Viltrumite that we've seen on screen. He didn't do much in the fight against Nolan, and Nolan was actively able to help Mark while fighting Vidor at the same time. It almost kind of felt like Nolan was trying to prove a point while fighting Vidor, making comments to him the whole time. He is still a full-blooded Viltrumite though, and that alone puts him above basically everyone else in the universe besides the other Viltrumites. Right above Vidor, we have Thula. Thula is a weird one to rank because she's supposed to be one of the oldest Viltrumites. We see her in the Purge flashback with Conquest, and she is visibly old, yet for someone as old as Conquest, she doesn't seem nearly as strong as him or any of the other older Viltrumites we've seen. She also literally lost in her fight against Mark one-on-one, only escaping because Mark hesitated to finish her. I choose to believe she's physically weaker than most Viltrumites, but has found success through developing a unique fighting style with her hair knife. Okay, and next up is the strongest of the 3 Viltrumites that they sent to confront Nolan. Lucan is definitely the strongest. He was the only one to actually survive the fight. Plus, he was the one that actually managed to injure Nolan, even if it was by surprise. He was also able to pin Mark down with literally one finger, and we saw Thula clearly struggling with taking Mark down. Now, Lucan didn't last as long as the other 2 in the fight with Omni-Man, but I still think out of the 3, he's probably the most dangerous. I think that the reason the Empire sent 3 Viltrumites, even with their limited numbers, was because these 3 are kind of a bit weaker than the others. Otherwise, they would have just sent one strong one. You could also take that as Nolan being so strong and dangerous that they had to send 3 because they knew he'd be able to defeat most of their agents one-on-one. Alright, now as you can see at the bottom of the screen, we're really starting to get down to the heavy hitters. And the first one of these 6 to go on the board is going to be Thetis. If I can get him in there. Thetis was the first Viltrumite to ever rebel against the Empire and live, as far as we know. He looks to be much older than most of the other Viltrumites, besides Conquest possibly, which means it's probably safe to assume that he's very strong, as Viltrumites get stronger with age, unless you're Thula, I guess. Due to him not fighting for a long time though, he's probably a bit rusty and out of shape, but I still think he takes on those bottom 3 Viltrumites. After Thetis is going to be General Krieg, or Craig, or whatever you want to call him. While we haven't seen him fight, he is a general in the Viltrumite army, so we have to assume that he is much stronger than an average Viltrumite. But I also think that he seems to be more of a logistics guy, and maybe doesn't fight as often as the others who travel planet to planet. Maybe in the future stories, we'll see that he belongs higher on this list, but for right now, this spot seems fine. Alright, and now we got the big 4. So out of these 4, I think that Battle Beast is actually next. Battle Beast is another one that we just haven't seen much from, but what we have seen shows that he definitely belongs up here with the heavy hitters. He had no trouble defeating Mark and the other Guardians in Season 1, and was able to defeat a Viltrumite one-on-one in the Prison Break episode, which instantly puts him above most others on the list. Most of the other Viltrumites, we either haven't seen enough of them to put higher, or they have actually already been defeated. I think it's fair to say Battle Beast would beat almost everyone on this list, besides maybe the 3 people above him. His bloodlust also contributes to his spot on the list. He genuinely enjoys fighting and wants more. Between his raw strength, claws, teeth, and incredible durability, Battle Beast is more than a formidable opponent. You could honestly even argue that he belongs higher on this list, but from what we've seen in the show, I just can't justify it. At our 3rd spot, I'm sure you assumed it's going to be Anissa. We don't see too much from Anissa either, but what we do see is devastating. She was able to kill the kaiju that her and Mark were fighting instantly, and then beat Mark into submission. A big thing that I'm basing her placement on here is the reports that Cecil and Donald had that said she was on the level of Omni-Man strength-wise. I can only assume she's one of the stronger Viltrumites since they sent her on a mission to Earth alone. You could make the argument she doesn't belong this high considering it seemed she was on more of a diplomatic mission to Earth, but I'm putting a lot of stock in the GDA reports. Alright, and in our last 2 spots, we have Omni-Man and we have Conquest. So with the number 2 spot is going to be...
Please.
No, it's going to be Conquest at the number 2 spot and Omni-Man at the number 1 spot for the most powerful character in Invincible. So I'll start with Conquest. I believe he only lost to Mark because he underestimated him, and Mark got help from Eve. If Conquest had started the fight 100% serious, and Mark didn't have Eve, I'm not sure that he would have survived. It seems like his fighting style is more of an aggressive brawler. He also has been probably fighting on autopilot for a long time, only fighting people much weaker than himself. I could see his recklessness being exploited by smarter and more tactical opponents who are able to match his strength, such as the top spot in our Viltrumite tier, Omni-Man. I think that at this point in the show, Omni-Man is still the strongest character that we've seen. He's never lost a fight, unlike most characters on this list. We know that he was very well respected in the Empire before coming to Earth due to his title, the Great Nolan. Most of the other Viltrumites don't have a title like that, and so I would assume that means that he's stronger than most of the other Viltrumites. The only time we have even seen him take damage is when he let himself get beat in the execution chamber and when he fought the Guardians. At the time though, the Guardians were the strongest heroes on the planet, fought very well together as a team, and they were 6-on-1, so I don't dock him for that fight. One of the only arguments you could make for Conquest topping this list, in my opinion, was the destruction he caused during his fight with Mark, and how we didn't see devastation on that level when Nolan was fighting Mark in Season 1. I believe this is just because Nolan was holding back on his son. He didn't truly want to kill him. I believe this is a moot point though, because still the best feat of any character in the show had to have been when Nolan destroyed the Flaxen's planet. That was the first moment in the show when we truly realized how dangerous Nolan could be. But alright, here's the final tier list. If you guys disagree with any of my placements of anyone, drop a comment down below and let me know what you think. While you're down there, please drop a like and subscribe. I got plenty more videos coming out on maybe some different topics, maybe some more Invincible stuff. You're going to have to subscribe to figure it out. But alright, thank you guys for making it to the end of the video. Peace.